Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth in a series on STEM education. I'm John Foster from Convergent Technology Partners, and with me today,
Jody Goff. I'm with Duell Corporation.
and we're gonna kind of wrap up the STEM conversation. We started off in the first episode talking about what is STEM. Then we looked at how is STEM deployed, and then the third series kind of talked about the spaces and how we deal with that. Today we're going to talk about how we assess in STEM, and especially how we assess when we've got remote learners. I think that's probably as big a challenge as anything. Jody, traditionally in an educational environment, I know when I was going through school, it was pretty easy. You get a math test. It's got 20 questions on it. Each question's worth 5 points. You're measured against some benchmark.
Right.
That's pretty straightforward, but STEM is not like that. And I don't think even the mathematics portion of that is like that much anymore.
Right. So that's the first challenge, is the fact that assessment has changed drastically anyway, and we're all trying to really get a handle on how we effectively assess student knowledge and growth. So I think we touched a little bit on standard-based grading in one, where we're looking for growth from learners, and we're assessing their knowledge at the end, and we're using multiple ways to assess their knowledge. We're also looking more at formative assessments versus summative. So formative would be that you are making small assessments along the way so that you can drive your instruction, alter your instruction
Right.
to meet their needs and meet them where they are. And then summative assessment would be that cumulative, the culminating assessment at the end. So even that has been a bit of a challenge of how we assess formatively and along the way. And then you throw in a whole new approach like STEM, and you ask yourself, okay, well, now what is this, which we talked about in the beginning.
Right, exactly.
And our first, what exactly is STEM, and then, how do we assess it? So the first step is, what is STEM? It circles us back to episode 1, because you can't really assess something unless you know what it is.
Right, exactly.
And making sure that our assessments align with that. It makes me think of how I always did my lesson planning and designed my lessons. It was like backwards design of looking at what my end goal was. What did I want the students to learn?
Right.
And then I would be able to back it up and say, okay, well, what's the path we're going to take to get there? And the assessment is actually at the beginning of the lesson. It starts back at the beginning, so that you have a clear path. But thinking about what is STEM, I got one of my little props.
Okay.
I don't know if we can see, if our viewers can see this, but it's a little, what?
I think it's a tea strainer.
Do you, okay.
That's what I thought.
That's what I'm thinking, because you have it, so you're making a connection here, right? Like,
Right.
I've seen something that looks like that.
Right, exactly.
Well, I hadn't seen anything that looked like this before. And so I was like, well, would it catch meatballs out of? Because it is hard.
Small meatballs, it could, yeah.
Have you ever tried to catch a meatball in a spaghetti pot, and they like run, they run from the fork. So I didn't know, okay, is it a meatball catcher? Like, what exactly is it? And then I saw your tea. Let me get your little tea strainer. And I was like, wait a minute. I have something at home that's very much like that in my drawer, and I've never known what it was. And so, and remember me telling you I would love that fresh tea like you have,
right, exactly.
but I don't have anything to put it in. I said, I would need to get one of those, what do you call this?
Tea strainer.
Tea strainer, tea bag. I have to get one of those. So, and my point here is you have to be able to identify first, going back to what is STEM before we can assess. Like, we can't really, I couldn't assess how effective this would be compared to this. I didn't really know exactly what this did. Now I would assess which one worked better. And how would I assess that?
Trial and error, probably.
Performance, right? I would have
yeah.
I would actually have to perform the act of making a cup of tea.
Right.
And then I'd have some criteria on the tea, maybe the strength of, I don't know how robust it was, so I'd have to have some criteria on
things
that.
like how you get the tea in there, how easy it is or difficult it is.
Right.
Different things, yeah. I can see that.
Yeah, because you know what? This would scoop up nicely out of that tea bag.
Exactly.
Compared to this one.
Right.
Because I had to push that in, scoop it up, and then pack it down a bit, and then close it. Imagine.
And try not to spill it.
Right. Imagine this, John. It just.
Right. You done deal.
Exactly.
And then you put the whole thing in the cup.
Right.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
So, STEM, I think, is a little similar to the tea bag, the metal tea bags, because, or any assessment, really.
Right.
First off, going back and identifying it, which we did, and what is STEM then? STEM is creative problem solving. So we want to see that there are multiple solutions to the same problem. Sure. And critical thinking. And then sparking an interest in STEM-related careers.
Right.
So now you identify it. Well, how do you assess that?
Right.
If a student now has an interest in STEM-related careers, or
well, I think that would be pretty difficult to assess in the short term.
Mm-hmm.
But you can assess the program or the validity of the program based on how many kids go beyond and actually get into STEM-related careers.
Right.
I don't know how you...
Well, you're postgraduate.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Sort of like how colleges, they are ranked on, how their employment rate following college. So, yeah, that's an idea of something that, and I think a lot of schools are looked at, even high schools are looked at in that way. It's like some of the programs that I work with through Duell, through one of our furniture manufacturers, believe it or not, they have a whole arm that has a curriculum portion to it, and students are able to earn a certification.
Right.
And I think you mentioned that the vocational schooling, well, STEM programs are also offering that in some of them.
Right.
So students can leave with a skilled trade of some sort in the STEM program. So another thing I was thinking about when you and I are, we're talking about assessment, is going back and what STEM is STEM science class. So many districts are, they have STEM class and then they have science class.
Oh.
Okay.
Right. I would think that you'd integrate them somehow, and maybe they do, in some way, but I don't know why you'd have something totally separate.
You were thinking, well, STEM is science, right? And science is STEM.
Right.
Well, in many cases, you have a science curriculum that's based on the next generation science standards, which this framework does integrate some different disciplinaries into it. So you have your core concepts, or core ideas, you have your cross-cutting concepts, and then you have your performance, I lost my train of thought there. Oh, right, the performance or engineering practices. So it's the performance, and they have those integrated. And so the next generation science standards have made great advancements to getting to more of the critical thinking and a little more STEM related.
Right.
But I think that many districts and curriculum developers are still thinking of STEM as being a different type of curriculum, because like we said, we're looking at critical thinking and creative problem solving.
Right.
And that's not always happening when we're working with the next gen standards and in a science class.
You're probably right, although I don't know how one can exist without the other. That's kind of
And I
unusual.
might not be right. That's my disclaimer here.
Right.
If you've watched the whole series, I'm just talking like what I think and based on my experience.
Which
Because
is okay.
truthfully,
Which
there
is
aren't.
okay.
That term expert, I don't know on anything
No,
or anybody, right?
And we should make it clear to everybody, this is just, for the most part, you and I having a conversation,
Right.
expressing our views, which is fine. That's how things really, I think, progress, and that's how you push
How-
things forward.
Right.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
just like the goal of STEM is to get kids to start, learners to start asking questions.
Right.
So we're just like, we're asking questions too.
Right.
And we're hoping that our viewers are saying, yeah, really, how is STEM assessed? And just start rethinking how, especially if it's in administration or teachers, rethinking how are you assessing STEM? Have you clearly identified, first off, what we want STEM education to result in? What outcomes are we
Right.
looking for from students? And then how do we appropriately assess that?
Right.
Big questions. That's
Yeah,
why I asked originally
absolutely.
if you were having somebody else on the show to answer that for us.
No. Now, I will say this. When in my introduction, I talked a little bit about how I think that a real challenge in this is for remote learners, assessing
Yes.
remote learners. But if I can use your prop for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
you could actually demonstrate this remotely.
I could.
This is one of the few that would, welding would be tough.
Right.
Those kind of projects would be tough. But I could actually demonstrate creating tea with either one of these,
Right.
and make a comparison.
And kids could go off and try to figure out ways to make tea on their own if they didn't have those specific tools.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so assessing STEM for remote learners, we use a lot of checklists really, and communication, even self-reflection for students. So we're looking for students now to do a great deal of self-assessment, and then we're basing what we learn about them from their self-assessments and in how they see things. And so that could definitely be done if we posed a question or a challenge. In that case, it's more of motivating the remote learners to pursue solutions to these, creative solutions to problems, because typically it's within that network and collaboration and facilitation of a teacher that helps them, have a stamina to try to problem solve and bounce ideas off from people. So I would say in a remote situation, it would be wonderful if we could just even motivate them to pursue and embark on the problem solving
Right.
activities
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah, because a lot of these would be very difficult to demonstrate over a computer screen. So,
Although it's
yes.
funny, I did see my son was on a virtual class, and a boy had forgot to mute his line, and he was sawing wood, chainsaw wood in the background, and they were like, "What are you doing?" And like, "Well, I was building a tree or a birdhouse."
Oh, well, I'm assuming it was a handsaw as opposed to a power saw.
No, it was very loud,
Oh,
like
was
like a table saw.
Oh, okay.
Zoop,
That would,
zoop.
yeah, that would be.
He had his
A little
phone set up
disruptive.
there, and
Oh, that's
hey, it was
great.
science class.
That's great. Well, great. I have to say I've had a lot of fun doing this series with you.
Well, thank you. Me too. Likewise.
I personally will walk away with, some information. I hope our viewers can do the same. If nothing else, it will stimulate conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And after all, that's pretty much all we can do here.
Yeah, that's our aim.
Yeah. I look forward to the opportunity to come up with some other topics or whatever that we could
put
we
it
could
in
do
the,
in the
have them
future.
put it in the
Absolutely.
chat.
Yes. Feel free to do that. If you'd like to throw some questions down there or future topics, please do that in the comments. Also, please subscribe, and we look forward to having the opportunity to get in front of you in the near future. Again, I'm John Foster with Convergent Technology Partners.
Jody Goff with Duell Corporation.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.